Something new is happening, the development of neurosciences. The neurosciences are different to misinformation, or so-called desinformatia, as the Soviets used to call it. The neurosciences study the values of social fantasy. It helps gives us a certain meaning, rather than another, to the same event. In this context, we could experience some alarming scenarios for the freedom systems inside democracies. In some of the training courses I held in security and military environments, I talked about a technique that already exists. It's called imagining the unimaginable. Maybe no one has yet been able to imagine the unimaginable, but the unimagined has already been conquered. We can move from a fact and arrive to the unimaginable, or even proceed on the other way around and turn the unimaginable into a fact. Just think of the use of radio frequency weapons or other non-conventional weapons which are hardly imaginable. Think about all the modifications to the jet stream to alter the high-flight airstreams and the climate.
Unfortunately, there are plenty of banned and non-conventional weapons. Non-conventional means that before the war starts, the parties enter into an agreement with the opponents to avoid the use of weapons with a huge impact on the population, on the environment, and so on. It can appear paradoxical, but that's how it is. As an example, you can think about the anti-landmine campaign. There are some agreements to try to limit the use and the abuse of certain weapons. Unfortunately, when a war starts, everybody ignores these agreements. If a war starts, the pacts have already been broken. Then it will be the international court's responsibility to judge. But the main goal of who is involved in a war is to win it. The probability of affecting the territory and the environment negatively is very high. It's our main risk.
Obviously, when you bomb something, you don't bomb a wheat field. You drop the bomb on an oil refinery, on weapons factories, or on chemical factories. In that circumstance, new pollutants are created. New pollutants that I like to call invisible bullets. Invisible bullets are capable of hitting anybody at any moment and can persist in the environment. So, even when a war is over, they can pollute fruit, vegetables and the grass used to feed animals. So even after some time, we can still have these polluted remains of war inside our bodies.
We have seen Agent Orange in Vietnam, what happened there with the defoliants and the other things. What has changed there isn't just the weather, a whole environment has been altered forever.
In my laboratory, I have a pack of cigarettes bought in Sarajevo and another one in Baghdad. There are found war pollution residue, even a bit of depleted uranium, just a particle, but I have found it. The reason is that during a war, the tobacco cultivation continues. And as the tobacco has a large leaf, it collects all the pollutants. I can smoke the war residue even after some time. This is why it's a never-ending war.
We have today, from a military and a scientific perspective, the opportunity to use some technologies or discoveries to generate events in order to heavily and almost permanently alter the environment, the whole environment. I am convinced that we don't need to look for anything else because General Mini's experience is more than enough. Nevertheless, if someone from abroad wants some further proof, even though Mini is one of the great military figures, he just needs Google, which is a search engine accessible to everybody. If you type in the search bar the word weather, followed by 2025 separated by blanks, do you know what the result is? You come upon a Pentagon document hosted by an af.mil website domain. This extension stands for Air Force and Military. The document states that by the year 2025, the conquest of the weather is planned. Owning the weather, literally. So the meteorological war is the first of these phenomena. The name is really interesting, but it was created in 1995, so it was around the mid-90s. It's not too recent. But what was the purpose of this program initially? It was to see if it was possible, locally, within a region, to modify, to alter the weather conditions, to make the airplanes fly and to improve the visibility. It was also trying to achieve the complete opposite, scarce visibility and no chance for the others to fly while we can still operate. When I say us, I mean that we belong to that system. When someone starts to study the methods to alter the weather, the range of options becomes enormous, obviously. When we say that the mild seasons do not exist anymore, we get the point, because the concept of season is going to disappear altogether. The reason is because it is possible to interfere with biological processes through changing the climate. This particular environmental war, that is one made by altering the climate or the productivity of soil, is technically already possible. We mustn't forget that during the 50s, there were already some rockets that could be launched by farmers to generate hail or rain. What I mean is, the technology was ready when I was a child, though on a much reduced scale. So it's surely possible to overturn the climate or the structure of the soil, and as such change how productive an area is. We don't have to imagine tsunamis caused by electromagnetic waves or by undersea explosions. I can turn the agricultural areas where there is no state control or there is limited responsiveness into desert. In those areas, if you want to eat, you are forced to buy my seeds. I am not saying that this happens systematically, but as the states have lost their surveillance power, while there are supranational structures that don't need states because they already have scientists, technologies, and even armies. Well, in this scenario, the dynamics explained above are already plausible. The environmental war is a heavy legacy that we have to carry with us. It's a good legacy for the ones eager for war. Those who like peace surely reject it and look at it like the worst thing that could possibly happen. All the conventions used to ban such death tools encountered a lot of obstacles. The environmental war materially affects our daily life and can even alter the cosmic order.
Nel nostro equilibrio di carattere, se vogliamo, cosmico addirittura.
When I talk about a global environmental war, I talk about tools that technically already exist and that are in the hands of people who are willing to use them. Wanting to use these tools is part of the concept of war. Well, these tools exist and can alter the environment almost permanently. It is a global war because the Earth is a closed entropic system. A modification of the ecosystem in a certain area generates another alteration somewhere else. That is why if someone wants to create a tsunami along the Auckland coast, he surely realizes that this will affect the earthquake faults from Burma to the Himalayas. Nowadays, when we see this sequence of earthquakes and seaquakes, for instance in China's Sichuan region, we think that these events aren't connected. But if we look under the sea's surface, down in the depths of the Earth's crust, there are lines connecting these points. For the people familiar with this military piece of hardware, HAARP is considered a sort of totemic structure. It's a point of reference. There are methods to materially generate rain or to alter weather conditions. These come from important research made in the course of time to improve living conditions. If someone uses the same tools for the opposite purpose and decides to completely parch an area, there can be unimaginable consequences. These scientists affirm that Cuba's hurricane disasters were caused by HAARP. HAARP is a big inter-university project. From a scientific perspective, it shouldn't have any link to the military for usage of these technologies. HAARP studies high and low frequency waves. The most recent application concerns the high frequency. It was born as a scientific project, but there is a small issue with it. Since the beginning, the main financier of the project is the Pentagon. As we used to say in the International Intelligence Convention, if the CIA is involved, something stinks. So, what is the purpose of HAARP? Its purpose is to research the high-frequency waves transmission to see how they affect the rockets and the satellite systems and some natural systems such as the ionosphere and stratosphere in order to control the influence caused by these waves. We have to consider that the whole American area is liable to hurricanes and tornadoes, so it's liable to the most extreme weather conditions. Before, you just had to dump some silver nitrate or any other agent from an airplane to bend the tornado's cone as if you were steering a vehicle. The problem was that these experiments, carried out with good intentions, didn't generate any profit, which is the only industry with enough resources to help the development of these research projects, the war industry. But think about the staggering progresses made by medical science to base hospitals. It may appear a paradox, but, like in a cycle, the war comes back to the starting point. Just like it happens in a game of Monopoly, when you pass go, you bring something important. On the other hand, the price paid was too high, so maybe it wasn't necessary. The problem with the climatic war case is that HAARP became a reference point that can be unleashed upon someone, like an opponent. What really happens inside this fabulous laboratory is hard to say, because it's obviously covered with the utmost secrecy. Some people claim it depletes the ozone layer, because the electrical generators used inside it would be able to affect the ionosphere and cause huge damage. It isn't easy to simply condemn it. It is understandable that there are political demonstrations that tend to criminalize certain experiments. It was an American scientist that accused the Russians of permanent climatic modifications in the central states of the US. But there is an experience that suggests something to us. If the Americans assign to the Russians a terrible power, that means they already have it or are close to achieving it. As the ongoing climate changes worry us, we are inclined to assign it something of great importance. I consider this as the big door that could let in any sort of influence or ideology. I wouldn't call it terror because it sounds too akin to terrorism, closer to the word fear. We are moving towards a world that will be progressively more afraid. Is fear a weapon? If we consider weapons everything that can produce fear, we can automatically insert it in that list. The emotional impact caused by a sky marked by these unknown trails is increased by the fact that they can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. All of them indemonstrable, as all the hypotheses made until now are valid. Concerning chemical trails, I'll tell the truth. I tried to study this phenomenon in depth. Now I'll say something that could bother someone. I used to think it was a swindle too. But the pictures we can find online are really dreadful because the trails intersect regularly.
What is sure is that it's not a mysterious phenomenon like some people may think. These trails are produced by the airplanes, especially the military ones, and in the course of time they have changed their appearance. That's why I've said this phenomenon is real and it strongly concerns the citizens. Therefore, the citizens need to be informed. Who has to do that? The government, through the appropriate ministers, both the environment and the defense. If it was such a trivial issue, it wouldn't have been raised throughout the world. For instance, I know that in the US, the government made an investigation concerning the subject, and there the conclusions weren't exhaustive either. Probably there's something related to military activities that I think isn't shocking. The real problem is that when there are experiments and phenomena of this type, the government of the country is the first to be aware of them. In any case, the citizens should be reassured by saying they are experiments or whatever they are, but they are not a concern for the health of the citizens.
I cannot say the difference between the ones caused by the condensation and the ones left up there on purpose. I cannot speak on the ones left there on purpose, or what the purpose is. I mean, why are they left there?
The most worrying thing for me is the fact that we didn't receive convincing answers.
I think that often exhaustive answers are not given because the knowledge of these phenomena is very limited. This situation increases the number of suspects. I understand the authorities' approach much more, not to give any explanation rather than totally deny. Think about the UFOs. They have never been categorically denied by anyone. If ever there was a huge fraud that can be used at a macroscopic level, it is UFOs. Why isn't there appropriate research financed by a corporation or a company? Let's do serious research. Tell me where these chemtrails are, and with an airplane we'll fly there to analyze these trails. Is that so difficult?
If there isn't anything to hide, I don't understand why not to say to the citizens, you don't have to worry because these visual trails don't affect in any way the health nor the climate. If no one does this, it's probably because there is the answer that it is better not to properly discuss the issue, or that it is better not to give any answer at all.